All right, this is SSL Family Dad, and today we're talking all about tomatoes. So welcome to episode 2 of the Gardening 101 series, and today we're going to talk all about tomatoes. So we're out here in the pumpkin patch of the SSL family farm. Actually, we've got some extra space here, and we have a lot of extra seedlings to plant. So I thought I'd take you through kind of some of the things I've learned about tomatoes and what we do here that we've had successful harvests with tomato plants. So a little bit background about tomatoes. Tomatoes are a kind of a subtropical fruit. They are originally from like Central America, South America, things like that. They're found in jungles and very hot, humid, wet areas. They're actually a vine, and kind of unique about the tomato plant is that it can root anywhere along the vine. So traditionally the plants would grow along the forest floor, the rainforest floors or whatever, and they would root along the way and produce fruit that would just kind of grow along the ground. Now we've kind of trained these in different ways and hybridized these and things to grow differently, and generally we like to grow tomatoes up some type of a trellis or support. But the thing to remember about that is that tomatoes, just like peppers and some other plants that we grow quite often, they are a hot weather crop. So tomatoes do very well in hot weather. The hotter the better. As long as they have enough water and as long as they have a good root structure, they can survive a very hot climate. And so that's one thing to remember about tomatoes. That also means that if we're in the northern climates, northern zones like we are here in Michigan, that you want to start these inside. So tomatoes are a good thing to start inside way ahead of time. You really can't start them too early as long as you have a good place to put them. 6 to 8 weeks before your average last frost in your area, you can start these inside and get a really good head start. Most of your tomato varieties that you'll find commonly are determinate, which means that they won't live forever. They're going to die. Their fate is determined. They will generally die at the end of the season when the temperatures start to cool. As they kind of have produced their fruit, they will die off. There are indeterminate varieties, but generally your beefsteaks and your Romas and things like that, generally those are determinate, so they won't last forever. A lot of our pepper plants we actually overwinter, so they are an indeterminate plant where you can generally grow them outside and then scoop them up, put them in a pot and take them inside. They'll grow through the winter and then you can take them back outside again. We've done that with several of our pepper plants and grown them for several years actually. They grow really well and they fruit really well, so something just different about a pepper plant. You'll see here I've got everything kind of all rowed out. I've got 36 inches here between my row going back, and each plant is 24 inches apart. And that's pretty good. You could space them a little further apart than that, but I generally like to grow things pretty tight. So 36 to 24 inches is good spacing for most varieties of tomato plants. Cherry tomatoes are probably an exception. They will grow very bushy and very quick, and you can give them even more space. There are literally thousands of varieties of tomatoes that you can buy. There are lots of heirloom varieties. There are lots of hybrids. The difference there is an heirloom variety is a open pollinated variety, meaning that the tomato plant will grow, it pollinates, it has the same genetics within the plant in the seed, and so you plant that seed the next year and you'll get a very similar or same variety of tomato. You'll get the same plant essentially. A hybrid tomato, which a lot of your Ace 55s, your Better Boy, your Best Boy tomatoes and others they're a hybrid tomato, and if you save those seeds and plant them the next year, you don't really know exactly what you're going to get. You may get something similar, but you could get something completely different, and so that's something to look for. So if you plan on saving seeds with a tomato plant, you want to make sure you look for an heirloom variety that allows you to save those seeds for the same plant next year. So So let's dig in here and get some of these planted. I'll take you through just some of the things that you need to know when you're planting your tomatoes, as well as they grow into mature fruiting plants. Okay, so we've got one of our seedlings here. It's the beefsteak variety tomato. So nice big tomatoes. So we're going to get this planted here. Now, I've got this really cool little hand tiller. And I'll tell you what, if anybody knows where you can find these things, I looked all over online and with no success. But man, is this a handy tool. I found this at a resale shop for like $1. What a great little tool. So just take it and kind of till up your spot where you're going to plant. And kind of prepares the space and loosens the soil up, and then you're ready to go. Now with tomato plants, generally tomato plants will like a very rich soil, so you can amend with a lot of compost and things like that. I will be doing that at a later time, but it's a good idea to, especially if you have very arid soil or sandy soil, you want to get some good organic matter in the soil as you're planting. The nice thing again, because tomato plants are a vine, remember, they can root all the way up the stem, so you can plant these very, very deep. You don't have to worry about them rotting at the base of the stem or anything like that. You can plant them as deep as you want to. I mean, you can bury it all the way up to here as long as there's some leaves showing. Of course, I wouldn't recommend that, but I generally like to bury them up the stem about 1 inch from the pot. So if you've got the level of your soil here, you may want to bury it up to about here. And that gives it just a little extra root zone there. We can get some good roots started for the plant to get a good healthy start. So remember, these are a tropical or subtropical plant, so you want to make sure that they have lots of heat. Tomatoes enjoy the sunshine, so you can leave these in full sun all day long. They're never going to get too much sun. The key is make sure they have enough water. Again, they're from a moist environment, so they do best when you have lots of water. So you want to make sure you keep the soil moist. One thing I like to do is actually put wood chips around, and I may do that this year out here in the field. These are extras, so I'm not going to get too finicky with these, but what I may do is put some leaf mulch, some grass clippings, or some wood chips around the base of all these tomato plants. That helps to hold the moisture down in the soil and helps to keep the warmth around them as well. That'll work really well. You can use a really rich compost soil for these. A lot of nutrients for them, and just water. Make sure they have lots and lots of water. So one of the things I'm going to experiment with out here is, as the plant matures, this is fine to do without any support, and it can probably get about, I don't know, maybe a foot taller than this before it's going to really need to get some support on it, especially once it starts to fruit. So one of the things I'm going to try as a companion plant here, I'm going to try to plant some sunflowers on each side of this tomato, and we're going to I don't know, I might be a little too far behind, but I'm going to give that a shot. As these sunflowers grow up, I'm hoping that they'll grow a little quicker than the tomato does, and we'll get those up here about the time this is about a foot taller, and then I can actually use those sunflowers, at least one of them, to strap the stem of the tomato as it grows and to support that. So just something to experiment with out here this year. So as all of our tomatoes start to grow here, they're going to need that support, and so there's lots of different ways to support tomatoes. Tomato cages are one option. You can also just use sticks. Take a stick, stick it in the ground. Generally, I like to stick the sticks in the ground as you plant the plants, so it doesn't disturb the roots too much once they're more mature. Get a stick that's about 2 to 3 feet tall, stick it in the ground, and then as the tomato grows up, you can use little zip ties, you can use twine, you can use whatever you want to kind of just strap the tomato plant right up there next to that on the main stem. Now, the other thing about tomatoes is that because they are a vine, they like to go off in all different directions. And so right now I don't have any examples of that yet, but what you'll see is right in the kind of the elbow of the plant here, you'll get another stem that will start to grow out in between here. That stem actually is a full another tomato plant. It's not a branch. And you could actually pluck that out once it's about this big. You can actually take those out and you can clone this plant. You can plant that into the ground and it'll produce another full tomato plant. But it depends on how you like to grow your tomatoes. Generally in greenhouses, they'll tell you that you want to, every time you see those little sprouts coming out in between these branches, you want to pull those off. They call them suckers. Generally in greenhouses, they're hanging strings from the top of the greenhouse, and they want those plants to get really thin and tall and fruit all the way up. Well, in your garden, you might not have 4 feet of space to grow a tomato plant that high, so I actually leave a lot of the suckers on there. I might pick some of them off, but generally I'll leave them in there, and plants get a little bushier, but those branches that will grow out, those little suckers that will grow out of there will actually produce more tomatoes for you as well. So I'm not entirely convinced that you need to rip all of them out, but that's up to you. So something I plan to try up in our main garden with our tomatoes, I have them all planted in rows very similar to this. And another idea for trellising is to create kind of a T at the end of your row here out of a wood, and then run some type of a cable, fishing line, twine, or something like that down the sides of each plant all the way down, and then have, you know, maybe 1, 2, or 3 levels of that go all the way down, and obviously supported throughout the rows. And then as the tomato plants will grow up, they'll branch over your line, and that will support them as they grow. Tomato plants do have to be supported. If you don't support them, they will fall over. Your fruit will grow on the ground, it will rot. Worms and bugs are going to eat them, and you won't be very happy with what you've grown. So make sure you support them somehow. I am not a huge fan of tomato cages, and I'll tell you why. Tomato cages generally are expensive. If you want to buy good ones, they're $10 a piece. Now, if I were to wrap my head around that with what we're growing here, which is about 250 tomato plants, that's a pretty good sum of money. Obviously, I'm not going to do that. You know, if you're just growing 3 or 4 tomato plants, 5 tomato plants, you want to spend 50 bucks on a good tomato cage, that's fine. But if you want to scale up, you're not going to be able to use them. If you buy the cheap ones that you're going to find at Walmart and other places, those cheap tomato cages, they're absolutely junk. They're not going to last you more than 1 season. They generally will barely even hold a tomato plant up that's, you know, got a lot of fruit on it anyway. They're a complete waste of money. Don't buy them. Get something else. You can buy bamboo stakes, which are a good solution, or just use sticks, like I mentioned earlier. Sunflower stalks, lots of other things out there, lots of other options. So get creative and support those tomatoes. So this is a black Krim variety. And we've got some Romas and some Cherokee purples and some cherries and some Ace 55s out here. So what type of tomato should you plant? What should you choose out of the thousands of varieties that are out there? Well, that really depends on what you're going to be using your tomatoes for. So before you start buying seeds, check out the MI Gardener seed store. I'll put a link to that in the description, of course. But there's lots of different varieties on there, and they all have different uses. Generally, your Roma tomatoes are one of the best tomatoes for sauces and canning and things like that, because they're a very meaty type of tomato. Some of your beef steaks and Ace 55s and stuff like that, those are great sandwich tomatoes. They're great for slicing and things like that. So you want to look into the different varieties and choose what will work best for you. But you really can't go wrong with tomatoes, no matter what size garden you have or what your plans are. Any garden should include some variety of tomatoes. They're so versatile and so easy to preserve, and in so many food products that most Americans eat regularly anyway, that I can't say it enough. Tomatoes are a great thing to grow in any garden. So no matter what variety of tomato you choose, hopefully you'll have good success this year in your garden. If you have any questions, please throw them down below in the comment section, as well as you professional gardeners out there that have something to add that I may have forgotten or missed, please throw that down below as well. I'd love to share that with everybody so that we can all learn together. So hopefully you're learning something from the Gardening 101 series. If you like the video, please hit thumbs up down below. Subscribe if you want to follow along for more gardening information, as well as all kinds of other farming and homesteading and DIY type stuff that whatever we have going on around here. So as always, guys, thanks for watching. Have a good one.